The Gemini killer was a complete mystery until now, because I've analyzed every detail about them. The death of one twin makes it seem that they could be weaker, but it's quite the opposite. And I will be going over every reason why they are so much worse than you think, starting with their origins. While there are still so many questions surrounding the elusive Gemini killer, there are a few things we do know. Gareth was a highly intelligent and adept killer. He was a member of Mensa and graduated at the top of his class in college. He earned the name Gemini Killer because he always killed in pairs. The victims of the Gemini Killer were always posed in the same way, laid out opposite of each other, holding hands with their blood smeared at their heads and feet, mimicking the astrological sign of Gemini. He primarily operated in the state of Kansas, and he left no trace behind after the kill was completed. As a result, there were zero clues as to his true identity. It's amazing that Prater was able to figure out who he was and how to locate him. Gemini has a massive ego. He was probably flattered when Prater reached out. Gareth even says that Prater's gatherings, which have been going on for years, were only initiated to get to him. He doesn't share much, not even with the other members of the group. When he first arrives at Leon's dinner party, he's asked to share what he'd been up to, and his only response was that he'd rather not. His anonymity was important to him, and even in the safe space that Prater had created for him, he refused to let his guard down. His motives for killing are still unknown, but he was prolific nonetheless. After Lady Vengeance was arrested, Prater called an emergency gathering at his house with the remaining members of the group.
My place, ASAP.
It's there that we first get a taste of just how full of himself Gareth really was. He was very worried that Mia might trade information about the other killers in Prater's group, namely himself, in order to get immunity for her own crimes. When Al and Dexter try to convince him that Mia wouldn't do that, Gareth reminds them that he is the person that the feds would like to catch the most because of his status as their most wanted criminal. His concern wasn't necessarily unwarranted, but by the end of the episode, Mia would be killed in prison, and it was made to look like a suicide. No doubt a hit by Prater's order to protect himself and his enterprise. Gareth would be safe to continue killing, at least for a little longer. Gareth shocked us all when he arrived at Prater's helicopter ride. After all, he was just murdered by Dexter.
We can go now.
His serial killer moniker and his MO makes a lot more sense now that we know he is a twin, or was anyway. With Dexter eliminating one Gareth, he became more exposed than he already was. The latest episode shows Gareth go into a bookstore to leave a note for someone. He places a bookmark in a book, and when Dexter examines it, he finds that it only said 8 p.m. Later, when Dexter gets back to his apartment, Gareth is there waiting for him, and his massive ego is on full display. Gareth asks Dexter why he took his note.
Why did you take my note, Red?
And Dexter plays on his need to feel important by saying he was a fan and wanted to get to know the Gemini killer better.
I'm a fan. I've been a little starstruck in the group settings, and I was trying to find an excuse to get to know you better. I thought...
When Dexter asks who the note was for, Gareth says it was for himself, which is confusing until we find out that he has a twin. The note was for the other Gareth. The fact that he has a twin brother draws so many things into question. Which one attends Prater's gatherings? Do they take turns each year? Does Prater know that Gareth had a twin? Did they do their kills together, or did they switch off for the sake of having an alibi? They may not kill together at all. It's possible that one of the twins has a completely different MO altogether. Maybe one of them is even the New York Ripper. After all, if Gareth is as smart as he claims to be, it would explain why even the highly seasoned Detective Claudette Wallace could never catch the Ripper.
We did not even find a bone saw amongst the torture devices.
Sure, at least one Gemini operates in the state of Kansas, but knowing now that there were two, it's not impossible for them to live in and work in different places. After all, it's not like they are literally attached to the hip. Plus, it would certainly make it harder for the FBI to pin down the identity of the Ripper. Even if Gareth was once a suspect in Detective Wallace's investigation, how would the theory against him pan out if Gareth is known to live in a different place entirely? And if Wallace did get close to discovering the Ripper's identity and Prater discovered the Gemini killer's identity, it would also explain why the Ripper suddenly stopped operating. Too much heat on him and his brother. And then there are the number of victims that the Ripper had. 22 even. A very specific amount, and it adds to the theme of twos that surround Gareth and his brother. There are two of them, maybe working in two states. Gemini killing in pairs, and exactly 22 victims for the Ripper before suddenly fading away. Both the Gemini Killer and the New York Ripper were highly elusive and brutal in their methods. Maybe they were competing with each other to see who was the better killer. It's also known that the Ripper would call the families of his victims and gloat about killing them. One of the Gareths is very quiet and subdued, but the other is clearly obsessed with showing off. So it wouldn't be unrealistic for the braggy one of the pair to taunt his victims' loved ones for an additional layer of satisfaction. Before you watch any further, I'm happy to finally announce that I'm releasing the first limited drop of my t-shirts. At the start, there are only 100 available, so make sure you buy them while you can at dtmerch.store. Enjoy the video. It's revealed that the Gemini Killer is at the top of the FBI's most wanted list. It's unclear how many victims Gemini had, but it is clearly at least 32 based on the trophies in Prater's vault. Trinity had over 200 victims, but he was older than Gareth and had been operating as a serial killer for decades before the FBI even thought to investigate him.
Who am I? You're a killer.
Whether they killed together or one of them was actually the Ripper, it's fair to assume that the Gareths would have matched and even surpassed Trinity's total with enough time, especially if Dexter hadn't eliminated one of them, solidifying them as the most prolific serial killers who were never caught. Of course, this is mostly conjecture. The identity of the New York Ripper has yet to be established, but this is definitely one possibility. He claims to be the smartest person in every room he enters.
When you're the smartest person in every room, you get used to the attention.
But he underestimated Dexter. He offers Gareth a gin and tonic, and as he's making it, he adds the M99 tranquilizer to one of the drinks. Anticipating a possible poisoning, Gareth switches the drinks at the last second, but Dexter anticipated that move itself, so when the drinks were switched, Gareth actually took the one with M99 and passed out. The rest was history. Dexter killed him right there in his apartment, and shortly after, it was off to the furnace to incinerate the body. Having done away with Gareth, you can imagine Dexter's surprise when the Gemini Killer showed up to the helicopter ride Prater arranged. Because Dexter left his brother in a furnace, Gareth hadn't heard from his other half in hours. Knowing that they had plans to meet somewhere at 8 p.m. the previous night, and that Dexter had found the note his brother left for him in the bookstore, he must have been aware that his brother was dead. The last person to see the other Gareth was Dexter, so he must know or at least suspect that Dexter killed him. As far as anyone else knows, there is only one Gareth, but now he knows that Dexter knows the truth. With his brother dead and his secret uncovered to at least one person in the group, the Gemini Killer has found himself in a desperate situation. Desperate people often resort to extreme measures to protect themselves. And with the ego on Gareth, he's likely seething after being bested in such a critical way. He's most certainly going to try to get back at Dexter in a way that either ends his life or ruins it. When Dexter outsmarted Trinity, Arthur Mitchell retaliated by killing his wife. Once Rita was dead, Dexter was left reeling and almost became subject to an investigation himself.
Are you the Bay Harbor Butcher?
This is the place to talk about this.
His coworker, Detective Quinn, was almost certain that Dexter was connected to Rita's death in one way or another, and Dexter's identity as a killer was on the brink of being exposed. It was only because Maria LaGuerta put the kibosh on Quinn's theory and his investigation into Dexter that he was not found out. Even then, of course, Quinn hired a private investigator, Stan Liddy, to continue looking into Dexter and find out what he was hiding. To no surprise, Dexter was forced to kill Liddy to keep all of his secrets under wraps. The first rule of the code is don't get caught, and once Liddy saw Dexter and Lumen dumping garbage bags off the side of his boat, he very nearly was caught. Liddy didn't exactly make it a difficult choice for Dexter either. He kidnapped him and planned to show the evidence to the folks down at Miami Metro. At that point, Dexter had almost no choice but to kill Liddy. It was him or Liddy at that point, and he chose himself, as he always has and probably always will.
Yes, I have an addiction.
The investigations into him stopped after that, but in the end, he still lost the people closest to him as a result of his bout with the Trinity Killer. His wife was dead, his stepchildren left to live with their grandparents, and his young son was irreparably damaged and left to figure out life without a mother to help him. All of this because Dexter simply could not bring himself to stop killing. And with an enemy as dangerous as Trinity, it was inevitable that he would face dire consequences at some point for meddling in his life. So now that he has picked such dangerous enemies again in the form of the Gemini killers, what will be his consequence this time? Will the remaining Gareth figure out Dexter's true identity, track him down, find out about his son Harrison, and target him too? If Gareth gets too close to Dexter and finds out who he really is, he could expose his identity to Prater and compromise Dexter that way as well. And then Prater could kill Dexter, or at least try to. Dexter is probably not above killing Leon Prater, especially now that he knows Leon has been paying the Gemini killer double for photos of his victims right before they die.
He pays me double for preview photos a moment before the kill.
In a way, he's facilitating the murder of innocent people, much like Jordan Chase was. And despite Jordan's prominence and the fact that he was not the one personally carrying out the kills against the women he found rotting in barrels, Dexter was eager to kill him and put an end to his reign of terror. Leon may be on his way to meeting the same fate, especially if he finds out what Dexter's true identity is or comes after him or Harrison. Remember, despite Dexter's best efforts, he cannot protect his family from the wrath of the Trinity Killer. Will Harrison meet a fate similar to his mother's? Gemini has already killed a father and his teenage son. He even called it his best work yet. He would happily do the same to Dexter and Harrison just for fun, let alone if it were necessary to keep himself safe or exact his revenge. If Dexter doesn't stay on his toes, he may have to deal with another tragic loss and maybe even finally accept the fact that his murderous lifestyle continues to be detrimental to everyone he cares about. Rita, LaGuerta, Dokes, Coach Logan, and his sister Deb have already had to die for his sins. Who's next? It's important to note that the Gemini killer is not the person to underestimate, and Dexter just gave one of them all the reason in the world to want to hurt him any way they can. After suffering such a tough blow by way of his brother's death, there is almost no telling what Gareth is going to do to Dexter to get his lick back. But the upcoming episode will almost certainly reveal what the Gemini killer's next move will be. We can only hope that Dexter can regain his footing and stay one step ahead of his latest adversary. If not, the repercussions could be fatal. And there are still a few things we can't be certain of just yet. Which Gemini killer made it to the helicopter and which one ended up in the furnace? It's quite possible that the person Dexter had been dining with the previous week and the one that he saw in the bookstore were not the same person. Which one was in Prater's house earlier that same day bragging about being in the cultural zeitgeist? As they discussed Mia's arrest and Lowell's disappearance, one Gareth was there going on and on about how many novels had been written about his activity as a killer and the fact that a movie was in the works depicting the same. He called Mia stupid for getting caught, suggested that she may have ratted out Lowell for a deal, and even went as far as to say girls shouldn't be allowed in the group.
Knowing the rules and adhering to them are two very different things. This is why girls shouldn't be allowed in the group.
All he seemed to care about was protecting himself, demanding that Prater take desperate measures. It begs the question just how far he is willing to go to keep up his ritual. Neither Dexter, Al, nor Leon could calm him down or put an end to his baseless speculations regarding Mia's fate. He was not even swayed by Prater's additional monetary offering. Is that because he is addicted to killing and wants to be safe to continue? Or was he just worried about protecting his brother's ritual? If one of them gets caught, it would be impossible for the other to even walk around freely, let alone keep killing and attending Prater's gatherings. His entire life could be turned upside down if he or his brother are captured or killed. No more killing and no more money from Prater. Then what? It's very possible that one of the Geminis is the brains behind their operation, orchestrating and pulling off the kills for his own sadistic gratification, while the other is simply the face of it all, visiting Prater's group and accepting the money and adoration. At least one of them is incredibly cocky, and that arrogance may have caused the misstep that allowed Dexter to take him out. If there is a dumb Gemini and a more intelligent one, it's impossible to know which one Dexter already eliminated or just how dangerous the remaining brother really is. If the remaining Gemini is the one that derives a sick pleasure from killing and has been smart enough to pull it off for this long without being detected, the consequences for killing the only other person he cares about could be far more extreme than if the dumber one survived. For Dexter's sake and the sake of his son, we can only hope that the less capable one is the one that sat next to him on Prater's helicopter. Even then, there is still bound to be a serious and swift backlash from whichever Gemini is still alive. The ripple effect is likely to be devastating to Dexter if he can't figure out how to get ahead and stay ahead of Gareth. He has already made one grave error. He may not be able to afford another one. If you liked this video, check out our video breaking down everything about the man who first brought them together and see Leon Prater's entire storyline explained.